Hello, it is Nancy Juetten. I'm the Get Known to Get Paid mentor and the host of the Learn More, Earn More show. And I am so excited about today's special show because if your podcast pitches have been falling on deaf ears and you are not getting to speak up on the microphone to speak to bigger and bigger audiences that can benefit from how it is that you serve and the value that you bring, well, the solution is here today, because that's exactly what we're going to talk about. And we're also going to talk about some powerful mindset shifts that you can make to make sure that the new year on the short-term horizon could be your best year yet, if you could just kick some of that stuff to the curb as soon as possible. So who's my very special guest today? It is Melanie Benson. Melanie Benson and I have known each other for, I want to say, over 10 years. We met at a high-end mastermind of a number of that was hosted by some very significant movers and shakers, found out we were kind of from the same hometown, and we found out we had a whole lot in common. And we've been in each other's universes for a number of that whole time, admiring, respecting, and appreciating each other's great work. If you want to know how to achieve greater results without adding more work hours to your life, imagine being able to spend more time doing the things you love in a way that feels wildly profitable. That's what Melanie Benson is known for. She's the host of the Amplify Your Success podcast and has a gift for guiding entrepreneurs building a business around their expertise to become highly paid authorities. She's got over 20 years of experience mentoring high-achieving game changers. She's an authority amplifier and a revenue strategist. She identifies high-payoff, profit-boosting activities and opportunities while dissolving mindset blocks that commonly derail progress. She's a lifestyle enthusiast, spends her free time in search of the best spas and beaches around the world when it's safe to travel. And I think that she's working on some powerful landscaping at home. It's going to be so beautiful that you're going to want to come to visit as soon as possible.
Yes, we'll never want to go to another beach in the world. We'll just hang out in our backyard.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Melanie.
Thank you for having me. I so enjoy every time we get to have conversations about the work we do in the world. And I'm so glad people get to eavesdrop in on it today and hopefully even share some of the questions and ahas that they have along the way.
Well, I hope so too. And I hope that thousands of people get to watch. One of the things that we're really here to talk about is some of the biggest mistakes people make in saying the wrong things to hosts so that they're sitting on the sidelines instead of speaking up on the right shows. Now, let me ask you, you have your own podcast. How many episodes?
We just, I think we're just publishing 260 next week. So 259 this week.
And you've had other versions of the podcast that also had many, many episodes, correct?
Yeah. I had a video show that we streamed into podcast that I had before this. And I think we had like 250 episodes of that. So we're getting up there.
Well, congratulations for that. And is it fair to say that once people found out that you, the Authority Amplifier, had her own podcast, that you may have had occasions to be inundated with pitches, some of which were brilliant and some of which were far less so?
Yeah. I'll say on an average week, I probably get 50 pitches, maybe sometimes 100 pitches a week, depending what's going on. And I'll say about one, we maybe agree to one every 3 to 4 months.
Wow. So that is an insight that really, that does have a wow reaction as far as my experience. What I'm having a wow moment. So does that mean that you are curating and procuring guests for your show that you are selecting as you are reaching up?
Yeah, I handpick every guest because the way I look at podcasting is, and you're doing this with your show, is, it is, people are borrowing our influence. They are bringing their message, their work into our world. And I want to make sure that what's coming onto my show is high quality and it's going to be massively valuable to our listeners. I curate a very exciting group of experts who want to learn from my podcast, and they're loyal listeners. And so I want to make sure that we have great content. And I have people tell me all the time, my show's one of their favorites. They love the guests that I pick. I intertwine solo episodes with like guest interviews. And once in a while we do on-air coaching of my clients. And so I want to make sure it's like continuing to give them massive value. And one of the things that I find is a lot of the pitches I get, like are you kidding? Like, do you even listen to my show? Do you know what it's about? Like this isn't even relevant in any context. So it's, and sometimes it's just, it doesn't stand out to me. So, and we'll unpack all of that. But also some of it, I don't have time. About 80% of the people that pitch me do not follow our pitch process. So it just goes into a folder, and maybe at a time when I'm have a little space, my assistant and I will go through it and say, hey, is there anything that looks interesting? So
Isn't that interesting? I have often said to people that if you want to be seen, heard, and celebrated on an influential show, do your part to see, hear, and celebrate the show you want to be on. And also look at the show from the host's perspective, which is if the host is not personally interested in what it is that you have to talk about, or what it is that you have to talk about doesn't serve the audience that they have worked so hard to build and grow and nurture, the chances of you getting on the show, if you take a self-centered, me first perspective, are kind of like slim to none. You agree with that?
Oh, I have a story that makes me really laugh.
Let's hear it.
And let me just say, everything I'm sharing is in the spirit of helping you understand what to do differently. And I truly believe that many people are just misinformed or don't have a good strategy, which I was certainly guilty of for many, many years. As we did podcast pitches to popular shows, I later realized once I started getting the deluge of pitches to my show, I'm like, I was doing that all wrong, and I probably annoyed a lot of people. I luckily relied on my own authority and my name brand credibility for a really long time to get most of those shows. So if you don't have that rapport with a podcast host, you've got to figure out how to build that. And a lot of people use podcast pitchers. So there was a instance about a month ago, and I will admit I was in a bit of a snarky mood because I was super deluged with a giveaway we were doing. We were doing Create Your Own Economy. And I like had about this much energy. And I have this one guy who pitches me regularly. And he said, hey, like he'd sent the first pitch, I put it in the folder. About a week later, he sends me a second email and he says, I know you're busy, but if you could please email me back so I can check this off my list.
Okay.
And if you could have grabbed one of those behind the scenes videos of me, like I should have captured this and put it on Instagram Reels, I'm sure. But there's like steam coming out of my ears, and I'm like, are you flipping kidding me right now? And so I had one of those educational moments where I educated this young man, and I said, look, I realize this is your job to get your client booked, but remember who you're wanting to do you a favor. And don't tell me you want to take something off your list when you want me to spend my money and my time to put your guest on my show. I said, I would highly recommend you find another way to approach me where it's about me if you want your guests on my show. By the way, we're not considering one pitch if you don't use my pitch process.
Brilliant.
And he was like, wrote me back and he's like, I'm so sorry. Thank you for sharing that with me. Like, that was super insightful. But I get these really interesting approaches all the time. There's a guy that pitched me on LinkedIn not too long ago. And so he first connects with me, which I really think is a smart move. I know you say build a relationship with the podcast host. I'm all about collaboration currency. So most of the people that get on my show is because I have a relationship with them. We have an ongoing, how can we support each other strategy? I like what they do and I want to give them exposure. So when this man, who again, obviously did not listen to the show because he had zero idea what my show is about. He was in the pet products world, and he sold pet product insurance. And he was like, had this great book that he wrote, but I'm like, dude, like there's no context here. And he kept saying like, well, I know you're busy, but can we talk about having me on your show? And I'm like, no, we can't. This is not relevant on any way, shape, or form. So it's just, I think the bottom line here is when you want, because I think there's a context that's missing, Nancy. People don't understand how much money and time goes into developing each and every episode. Every episode, I invest about $200 to $300 between my team's time, my editor, my producer, my time. Well, actually, that's not even really counting my time, because my time would be about $800 to $1,000 for that hour. And I am curating a highly valuable episode where I'm showcasing that person as an expert, and I am asking them powerful questions to really showcase who they are and the value they can bring to my audience. They almost always get clients. I'm investing my money to showcase this person and getting zero out of it. It's not about you. You really need to win that spot.
So I would quote something from Maya Angelou, and she says, when you know better, you do better. So
Absolutely.
For anyone who has been making it all about them and not all about the host, that's a value bomb. It's about the host and the value that you can bring to the host and their community, their carefully curated community. And it's not any favor that they owe you or any obligation they have to work your to-do list. So I hope you've gotten some value there. Wow.
I'm going to be sharing this episode with everybody that pitches my show from this moment on, right? Like, you'd only get to pitch me once you've listened to this episode with Nancy Juetten.
Thank you. And now we have my dog chiming in saying, I'm so in agreement with all of that.
He's like, yes, totally.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about show pitchers for a second. There's this thing called, what do you call it? Social selling. It's kind of a hot topic these days, where people are falling into your emails and your private messages and trying to get you to buy something, do something, have something. And it sometimes, to my experience, feels very formulaic and very transactional and kind of icky. So there are show pitchers that are under the gun to book their clients on a certain number of shows every month, and they just have to keep at it to get it done. As a host, do you feel the difference between the approach that is made by a pitcher versus the approach that is made by the person whose name is on the door? And what thoughts do you have about that, one way or the other?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I got to say, like, I totally value and appreciate the people who hire a guest pitcher, because I understand it is a lot of work. And if it's not your superpower, it is something that makes sense to get somebody to do it, because theoretically they are relying on relationships that they nurture and cultivate. I think where it's gone awry is a lot of these companies are not necessarily cultivating and curating collaboration currency, which is my word for relationship capital. And so they're just blind pitching to get on. They're basically getting these listings of the top 100 podcasts, or because my podcast has made it into the top 5% of business podcasts. They're just going and taking these lists and then going through and pitching the show hosts. And I think what's missing is there's no, hey, like, I know we're asking you to do a favor. We'd really love to get our guy on your show, or this great guest on our show. On your show, and here's what we can do to make sure it's a win for you. Like, we're missing that end of it. And what I think, and so I've told straight out many of the pitchers that your currency, your investment in the show is the guest sharing it on their social media once they've gone live. And absent of that, there is zero value outside of what, great conversation I can create with the person in the interview. And if I don't know that person, I don't know if I can have that conversation. So you need to figure out how to cultivate the relationships. And I think that's where things have broken down a bit, and why I tend to lean towards people I have a great relationship with. Now, caveat, Nancy, I know this has happened to you. It's happened to me. You have somebody who cultivates an online relationship with you to get on the show, and then they're like out, right? Like, it's like there's no sharing, they've disappeared, there's no interest anymore. And so that's not really the end goal here. Look at the relationship as the long game. And one of the short game opportunities is to maybe swap podcasts, or to in some way, shape, or form, to add value to that audience and that show host by sharing it and being magical, in the guest spot. So I think there's so much I want to say about that, but I'm going to take a pause because I know you probably have a follow-up question, but there's a part 2 that's emerging as this is coming through.
Well, and I want to hear part 2, but I want to comment on, I realize this is a rather colorful remark, but it's not just about the show. I mean, I say to my clients, we're not looking for one night stands here. We're looking for lasting, satisfying, mutually satisfying relationships.
Oh, Nancy, getting a little risky there.
Racy here, but it's like, when it's a hit it and quit it situation, and you know what it feels like to be there experiencing that. And juxtapose awesome. That to what it feels like when, even before the show has aired, your host has been promoting it ahead of time. And when the show is live, your host is edifying and making you feel great about who you are and what you're bringing to the party. And then when the show is over, they go the extra mile to make sure that the extra mile people see it and hear it and celebrate it and comment on it. That's a totally different kind of an experience than hit it and quit it and get on with it. And so I really want people to appreciate that it is a long game. And I appreciate you calling this out, because I mean, you and I've known each other for 10 years and we have never, ever been a guest on each other's show, but I'm a highly patient person.
Well, okay. So can I just bring this into the forefront for a minute? And I just really want to acknowledge you, because you asked last year, I think it was, when you recognized what my show is about, and you said, hey, I'd love to be a guest. And I loved that you brought it up. And at the time, I was in the middle of a promotion for something that felt very similar to me. And so I was like, oh, okay, I don't really see how to make it work where it didn't feel like competitive. And then I thought, that's silly. It's like, and so this is a mindset that I think is so critical as we go into the right podcast shows and the right online shows for someone are going to be typically our competitors, people who do similar things. And so what I came back to you and I said, look, Nancy, I adore you. I think you're amazing. I love what you're doing. Let's find some synergistic topics that we can collaborate on and get on each other's shows. And so the gem, I think the goal that so many of us miss is, first of all, we get in our head and we think there's competition. Honestly, there really isn't competition. There is co-creating new outcomes. I call it collaboration currency, because I truly believe that when you're collaborating, you are able to borrow the influence and the credibility of your host, but you're also co-creating new opportunities together. And you can always find something that is meaningful and valuable that isn't the same exact topic that your host would normally talk about. And also, the other thing is your host has carefully developed a following of people who are your ideal clients. Your competitors serve your ideal audience 9 out of 10 times. Some of them maybe aren't perfect, but these are quality, high gold opportunities to shorten your path to getting in front of ideal leads.
Brilliant. So smart, so strategic, and so abundant. And I think that to the extent that we can adjust our mindsets to have an abundance mentality, we're going to be gobsmacked by the results that unfold for all of us, because not all of us are each other's glass of tea. I remember, and I told you this when we were in the green room, there's this gentleman who is known as the Warren Buffett of the internet. His name is Alex Mandossian, and he is an exceptional speaker. And he teaches people how to make offers from the stage and have them be highly fruitful. And I remember him saying that he would bring and invest all this time and effort and money to bring people to his internet portal and invite them in to buy whatever it was that he was selling. But when people were starting to click away, he was so smart. He identified the 3 top professionals that, to his way of thinking, taught similar material in a world-class way. And he says, hey, before you go, if I'm not your guy, that's okay. I still want you to get the lesson. These are 3 people I highly recommend. Go see them and see if they're your thing. But he was like giving to others as people were exiting his internet portal to see how people could get the solution that they were looking for. And I think that was a great example of collaboration with your competition.
Mm-hmm. I think if you look at all the stages, whether it's a podcast, an online show like this is, if it's a virtual stage or an in-person stage, 90% of the stages I've spoken on over the last 21 years were my competitors. Part of the magic of turning a podcast or a guest expert spot, which is really what it is, an opportunity for you to be a guest expert on someone else's stage. The brilliant opportunity is to solve a problem. And this is a writer downer. So as you're listening in, write this down. You want to solve a problem your host or their recent guests have created. I learned this many, many years ago. As a matter of fact, the event we met at, that those hosts eventually had me speak at one of their events, and they taught a lot of marketing. What happens when you teach people a lot of marketing? You have people who can't implement because it's not their superpower. And so they get stuck in the, how do I get it all done phase? And one of the solutions to that is hiring and outsourcing and delegating the effort so you can stay focused on the thing that you do well. So they had me come and speak on my strategy to build a team and hire people to implement the marketing.
Brilliant.
It was a great win-win.
That's so good. Love that. So many takeaways already. Now, going back to the promise of what not to say to a podcast host.
Yes.
I'm sure I know for a fact that you have 17 mistakes that you may be making as a guest that could be costing you the lead and the client. It's a special report that you can actually go to download at www.melaniebenson.com/get-known. I want you all to run and not walk to that link, but I'd love for you, if you're willing, to count down David Letterman style, maybe the top 5 big mistakes that are costing you the opportunity to take your place at that microphone, and maybe what to do instead. So take it away.
Well, we've been covering this one already, but it's worth saying again, is your cold pitching podcasts. Podcast hosts have no idea who you are. And so again, I think the warm up a little bit is good, or it's like, making sure you're really clear what you can do for them. I bring this up over and over and over again because I truly want you to get those shows. Like, I want you to succeed. I want you to get the gold. Like, I want you to be shining your message brightly on the best stages and podcasts and shows. So figure out how to get somebody to find you the shows and change the pitch so that you get seen as the authority they can't say no to. Okay, that's really what it is. And so along that line, the fourth, if that was number 5, number 4 is you are pitching with a boring topic. Okay, we're just going to say it like it is. And I had a client, I don't know, it's about 3.5 years ago, I guess. And he came to me because he wanted to revive his speaking career. I do a lot of messaging and helping people transform something that's coming across boring and really like amplify the authority that they have of their message. And so I said, Morgan is his name. I said, Morgan, I know you're fantastic. I can feel your power, but when you tell me what your topic is, I hear white noise. Like it doesn't stand out. There's no power to it. And that was because he was focused on the outcome he was focused on the feature of what he does. So it was like the performance coaching instead of an outcome that audience or that host would find really intriguing. And so I tweaked his messaging a little bit, sent him back out, and he got booked immediately on 3 stages. And then I took him to an event where you pitch podcasters, and boom, he left with like 25 bookings, like in like a 3-minute pitch. So there's a lot of value to being better at the topics. And sometimes the topic will be dead on and the host is like, oh yeah, I totally get the value of that, because it's kind of solving a problem that's simmering in their mind for their clients and their audience. But if you have something that everybody and their brother's talking about, you got to find a way to make your topic a bit snappier. And I know you know this one because this is in your wheelhouse too.
Yeah, the whole putting pizzazz in the topic, intrigue, curiosity, What's new, what's compelling. I mean, I wrote a book called Bye Bye Boring Bio because I have read thousands and thousands of bios over the last many years that have been sleep inducing instead of opportunity creating. And sometimes we do get kind of caught up in what, like I'll give an example of a boring topic or something that may anchor this a little bit. There are a lot of people that teach people how to get unstuck. Mm-hmm. If you're someone who thinks people need to get unstuck and you say, I help people get unstuck, like take your place in line. There's like thousands of them you could link arms with and have a fantastic conversation. But what's different about the way you teach it or tell it or bring it that would make you the guest that someone would actually want to talk to? Same thing with people who help people get to number one bestseller on Amazon. Every book coach on earth says, I'll get you to number one on Amazon as a book coach. And I think, well, come again. Like, I know 42 people that do that. What makes your particular method so remarkable and your results so compelling that I can't wait to hear something fresh and new? So if you think your topic is clear, but if it's not compelling, and worse yet, it's boring, you probably need to bring in the reinforcements. Wouldn't you agree, Melanie?
I do. I have a personal experience of this where I was, and as podcasting has gotten more and more popular, I think through the pandemic, podcasting went through the roof because everybody was like a captive audience. Like they're not going anywhere. They're stuck at home, or they're not necessarily doing the activities they would normally do. So they were looking for other ways to learn and grow. And podcasting literally like tripled in its integration, I guess, into different communities. And so I was talking about how to leverage podcast guesting as a client attraction machine, and that did okay. But I did one tiny little topic change, and all of a sudden my bookings went through the roof. And it was how to turn your competition into your number one lead source as the podcast guest. All of a sudden, everybody was like, okay, can you come on my show and talk about that?
Oh, so, that's so good.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to experiment to find I call the magnetic messaging component of it. And there's some little tricks that I teach, but just for the sake of getting through all five, we'll keep it on the high notes on that one.
I love that. Okay, so cold pitching, don't do it. Pitching a boring topic, don't do it. What's next?
I'm torn on this one because there's a couple that kind of land here, but I would say the number 3 one is you are forgetting to use your credibility. So, I think of credibility and authority as kind of similar concepts. And I always tell people this, I have a little signature saying here that authority is in the eyes of the beholder. And so when somebody perceives you as an authority and a credible expert, you are 10 times more likely to land the spot, whether it's the client or the podcast booking, the speaker engagement, than if they don't see you as credible. And so when you're pitching, most people, I know you're very humble. You don't want to seem like you're bragging. And I totally get that. Like nobody likes a bragger. But there are ways to showcase your credibility so that your chances of landing that booking are 10 times higher, because people want people they can trust the results of to be in that expert position. So you need to think of ways to pull your credibility and your authority into your pitch, into your bio, into your messaging, so that it's clear you know what the heck you're doing. And it's easier, I guess, if you have a podcast booker, right, Nancy? Like they can sing your praises for you. And also there's a subtle balance here. I will oftentimes steer away from people that I know are out there on the podcast circuit pitching every single show. There's a very well-known author that has pitched my show 3 times. I have said no to him every time. Wow. Why would I do that? Like he is one of the top selling authors of all times. I won't have him on the show. Why? Because I know he's on everybody else's show. Everybody's already heard his talk. It's the same talk he's doing everywhere. That's not what I want right now for my show. I want unique, original, powerful, magnetic, value-based, and he's not a value-based speaker either. He's, I know who he is and I know his work, and I'm like, there's not going to be a lot of value in what he's teaching.
Is he schlepping his book?
Yes.
Okay. So can you do just a little sidebar on those who are out there schlepping their book? Forgive the term, but I'm a nice Jewish girl.
Yeah.
If your whole objective is to schlep the book, what do you say about that?
Well, again, like there's a, what are you going to do for the audience? What are you going to do for the host? So if you want to get on, here's a pitch that really got my attention recently. It was somebody who has a book, and they obviously paid attention to my materials because the pitch was, and as a matter of fact, I should have had the book out there. I've got it right here on my desk, out of reach though. And the book was on mindset, and the guy wanted to be on my show, and I really liked his material because I'm a sucker for mindset. And I knew he was pitching himself everywhere. And so part of the pitch was, and by the way, when you have me on your show, I'm happy to share it to my 45,000 followers on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And so my assistant, by the way, always goes and double checks and sees, do they really put the show on their social? And he does. And he does a really nice job of showcasing it and giving the host all kinds of kudos and edifying the show and all that. And so I know that he's going to follow through and be a great guest.
So I just want to unpack that just a little bit for people who are uninitiated. You as a show host, I'm guessing, would like to have more eyeballs and more ears on your show, more downloads, more 5-star reviews, and more people paying attention to Amplify Your Authority with Melanie Benson, correct?
Absolutely.
So when someone demonstrates to you in their pitch that they have 45,000 people on social that they will proudly share the episode out to, your reaction to that is?
Okay, let's talk. It's not a guaranteed booking. Like I've had people who said, I got 100,000 people on social, but like it just wasn't the right topic, or it was something I talked about several times, which brings me back to something we were talking about earlier, persistence. You were persistent and you asked a few times to come on the show, and it kept it in front of me, right? And I've had people who would say, hey, I'd love to be on your show. Is this a topic of interest? I would say, love the idea, not the right time. Bring it back to me in 6 months.
And most people, when you say bring it back to me in 6 months, put it in the round file and say next. And the person who really wants it is going to put it in their calendar, and they're going to follow up, because that's what winners do. And the first time someone says yes to you, like if you get an easy yes, it's easy for you to think that it's all about your approach. But when you get the fuzzy yes, that's when you have to really check your conviction to being on that show at the curb and say, I want this enough to follow up. And are you going to be the one that actually does that? Mm-hmm. Because if you're the one that actually does that, and it kind of reminds me of a story, which I'll share. There's someone you and I both know and think very highly of, David Newman. He has a show called The Speaking Show. It's one of the top 5 marketing and management podcasts on iTunes today. And I just think the world of this fella. And I listen to his show, and I'm part of his Facebook community. I'm thinking, I want to be on that guy's show. And I tried everything I could think of to be on the guy's show. I got introduced warmly. I followed up like a winner. I did all the things you're supposed to do. And I'm still like getting crickets. And I'm thinking to myself, did I do something wrong? Did I go over the arc? Was I too overenthusiastic? Did I offend him in some way? And I satisfied myself that no, I hadn't done any of those things. So what I ended up doing is, in the subject line of an email, I said, if you're not stuck under heavy furniture, would you give me a call? It was a line from that movie, When Harry Met Sally. And he wrote back to me and he said, oh my God, this was stuck in spam. I got your book. I loved your book. You've come highly recommended by multiple people. I love what you're up to. Yes. Is December 8th soon enough? I want it enough to see it through, even if it meant that I was going to get a rejection. And I think that's an important point to consider. If you want to be on Melanie's show, do you want it enough to keep following up beyond the first fuzzy rejection? If you want it enough, keep at it. You'll find the right answer. Now,
yeah.
Yeah.
And I acknowledge persistence. And so if it's not the right fit, but I really appreciate the approach, I'll oftentimes say, look, it's just not a good fit for the show. And I'll give them referrals to other shows that might be a better fit on, but it's all in the approach, like the human connection goes a long way with me.
Right. I love this line, kind of borrowed from the O.J. Simpson trials. If it does not fit, you must not commit.
Oh
so we've covered cold pitching, pitching with a boring topic, forgetting to use your credibility. How about another one?
So I'm going to detour just slightly on this one, because this has to do with what you do in the conversation. And when you've won the show, when you've won the spot in the spotlight, one of the biggest mistakes that I see many people making, which is what's costing them the lead, is they're winging it. They do not have a content strategy. They do not have any good sound bites. They don't have a hook. They don't have content that gets woven together in what I call the golden thread that moves people from being interested to being intrigued and then being invested in taking action with you. I was interviewing. So I interviewed somebody on my show and I was like, holy mackerel, this is horrible. This is so boring. Like I was like having a hard time keeping my typical enthusiasm and curiosity high, because this guy was getting so lost in his stories, which is another one of the mistakes we make. And then later he invited me to his show. And one of the things that came up was how oftentimes when I'm a guest on a show, I would say about 2 out of 3 shows I'm on, I get at least one VIP client, if not a whole slew of leads, some inner circle investments, things like that. I'm almost always getting some kind of leads and clients out of it. And that came up in the interview on his show. And he said, how do you do that? Like, how does that work for you? Because I'm out there doing all these shows and I feel like it's a total waste of time. What's different? And I knew what was different, because I'd interviewed him and I knew what was different is I don't get lost in 10-minute stories that have no purpose. And I asked another guy one time who I know is really great at stage. Like, he's a closer and he has the best content. Like, I've seen him speak on stage and create like a stage rush to the back of the room. And on the podcast, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what the heck is this? And he admitted to me that he totally wings his podcast interviews. Big, colossal mistake. A podcast interview, a virtual stage, these are media opportunities. You are being interviewed by the media. You are getting exposure. It is just as valuable as any opportunity to get on a stage and sell. And what we have to remember is that there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes to prepare yourself and to know how to weave together really juicy talking points and great content that is of massive value that gets people to go, ooh, lean in. How do I find out more? Which is what gets them to take action and come to you and want to work with you later.
And you are so brilliant at that. And I would be remiss if I did not restate that the 17 mistakes you are making as a guest expert that are costing you the lead and the client is available to you right now. If you go to www.melaniebenson.com/get known, and we will put that in the show notes, and you will do yourself a fine favor to run and not walk to get that report, because we're only covering 5 of them. And the rest of them are probably equally as damaging, but equally more remarkable when you turn it around. So that leads us to the number one thing that you think is a big mistake that people are making that may also potentially have an impact on the trajectory of their business. What would you say that would be?
I'd have to say not pitching at all. Not getting on the shows in the first place, not making it an integral part of your strategy. I have quite a few clients in my mastermind and in my inner circle, and they're struggling to get quality leads in the door, and they're doing launches, and their initial issue is like, oh, I just don't have enough people on my list, or whatever the problem is. And I'm like, where's your podcast guest strategy? Like, how many people are you pitching every month? If you are not getting the results you want, chances are you are invisible and you're a bit of a best kept secret. You can be the best at what you do, but if you're not visible in front of the places your ideal clients are looking for you, then they can't see you. And that means they can't hire you. If they can't see you, they can't hire you. You can't make the money. You can't grow your business, et cetera, et cetera. And so I am a firm believer in having an integrated visibility strategy. It's one of the pillars that I teach. Is every month you need to be reaching out, cultivating that collaboration currency, inviting people into some kind of collaboration and pitching to get on podcasts and shows. And you got to stay visible. And part of it comes from being a well-known expert in your field. Like, I am very grateful that I have developed this over years and years and years. But honestly, when I came out of the gate, once I kind of got my stuff together and I knew what my message was, and I knew what my roadmap was of what needed to be in place, it only took me a few short months to start getting talk after talk after talk booked, because I was putting all these components together.
Well, yes. And you believed in yourself and had conviction around what you were doing and felt ready, able, and on fire to share it, which sort of begs another question, is that there are some people that are not pitching at all for a whole variety of reasons that have everything to do with what's going on between their ears. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Let's unpack this, because it's easy for me to say you're not doing it. And there's a lot of reasons why you're not doing it. I'll cover my top three.
Okay.
One of them is there's a lack of clarity. So there's a lack of clear messaging, a lack of, there's a woman that went through one of my magnetic messaging programs. She's like, Melanie, like, I don't know what my topic is, so I'm not pitching myself. So clarity is a big one. But I think one of the things that feeds a lack of clarity is this persistent, what we might call imposter syndrome or fraud syndrome. This feeling that, I don't know, like, is what I'm doing valuable? Do I have a message that people really want to hear about? And I think, Nancy, sometimes there's such a deep woundedness we come out of childhood with. I notice a lot of, I don't want to like stereotype men versus women here, but I do see it more with women. There's especially in our generation, there was a lot of culture around be seen and not heard. And I think a lot of women took that on and didn't shake it later. And so, when it comes time for you to share your message and amplify the reach of your great work in the world, if you're feeling invisible, like nobody's getting it, and you're not getting the opportunities, it's probably because you've slid into some fear and self-doubt. You're taking on this story that what you do isn't good enough or doesn't matter. And it's costing you in that confidence and clarity to go out and get on stages and share your message. I don't know. Do you see that too, Nancy? I know you work with a lot of people who want to get pitched.
Yes. And, it's been interesting you should bring this up, because someone wrote to me over the weekend who had purchased one of my book, my Bye Bye Boring Bio book. And the person said, you make reference to things like stunning results and big impact and things like that. And I'm just not someone who wants to put that level of amplification on what I do. It feels really off to me. He was going on and on about his humble approach. And I was thinking to myself, with my heart, I'm thinking, this person has issues that are going to stand in the way of them accomplishing anything in their business. Because if you cannot stand in and on the results you bring about for your clients, and you don't know who your clients are, and you don't know what's special or magical or preferred about what you do and how you help, and you're not willing to stand in and on that, well, good luck selling it. you've got much bigger problems to solve than whether or not your bio is boring. You've got to get to the meat of the matter of what's stopping you from playing so small and thinking so little of yourself,
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into the third reason. And that is, it's a limitation paradigm.
Oh, that's a good word. I love that.
Yeah. So I've been trained in neurolinguistic programming, and honestly, it was the greatest investment I ever made was the investment I made in the mindset work, because my first couple years in business were tragic. Like, I was not clear what it was going to take to have a business. I had so many limitation paradigms. I talked myself out of all the things that would have really worked. I was struggling to get past $1,000, and doing that transformation work with my coach, what was profound, because I got one really important outcome, and that is what you believe and you focus on is what your paradigm is. And your paradigm is dictating how big or how small your impact in this world is. And your impact drives your income. So if you want to grow your income, you've got to be willing to stretch the impact you're having in the world in some way, shape, or form. And that fear, and I just want to acknowledge there are so many reasons that this fear can exist, all the way from trauma in your childhood to, like conflict about money and success. And conflict is a very real thing. It's one of the 3 financial saboteurs that I work with my clients around, because when you have conflicting feelings about growing your impact in the world, you will not grow. You will make up a story about why you need to be humble and, all the other things. And it's very real, and the story feels very justified, and you will have all this rational evidence of why it needs to be that way. But the truth of the matter is, when you have great work, when you are in your superpower, when you have something that helps other people solve a costly problem, I believe that there is an abundance of opportunity to be financially rewarded, to give that solution in the world, to solve those problems, to share your story and your techniques and use your processes. So the only thing that's standing in the way is what's right here.
I love that. And I'm also reminded of a quote. I think it was Jonathan Bach who said it. He said, if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them.
It was actually Ford, I believe.
Was it? I don't know.
I don't know.
If I missed it, anyway, I apologize.
That's okay. We'll fact check it later.
But I want to talk about that, because as we are going live in this moment, and we are in the middle of the very end of November 2021, as this is going live, we are looking at a shiny new year ahead. And what people charge for their services is something that many, many people struggle with. Some people are circling the drain with low value offers. Some people have so much confidence and conviction that they have no trouble asking for 5 or 6 figures tuition to benefit from how they help. And then there's a whole sea of people somewhere in the middle that are trying to find their footing. Do you have any advice or guidance to people who are dealing with this struggle?
Yeah. This could probably be a whole session in itself, but I've moved in and out of that struggle myself as a business owner, and there's a couple of key components. And one is you have to know what your superpower is and who it's really for. And this is the game-changing concept. This is one of my signature sales strategies. I teach something called zero friction selling, and part of zero friction selling is to know what is the value of the solution you provide to your client. When you understand those 3 key components, it's so much easier to move into these higher ticket offers and to have that confidence and the courage. Now, of course, some of it is just understanding how selling works and to build up that muscle and the mastery of how to hold a really powerful enrollment conversation where you're not selling, you're making an invitation. So, there's a lot of framework around that. But the only thing standing in your way right now of being a highly paid authority is understanding how that trifecta comes together for you. If you are in front of the wrong audience, it won't work. If you don't understand the problem you're solving, it won't work. You have to understand those three key pieces and integrate them. And then what I call a unique profit amplifier emerges. And that's a higher ticket offer that allows you to solve a really important problem, a really costly problem, and to be paid well to do it. And anything short of that keeps you in the rat race and in the struggle mode. Now, there's a lot of people, Nancy, who've built very successful businesses on the low ticket offer. And it's not that that isn't a valuable part of the overall strategy, but if that's the only thing you have, you will be always in perpetual financial struggle.
You're right. This is something that could be a whole subject of a whole future show. And I would be so interested in having that show conversation with you, because I think that this is for women in particular, I think, struggle with standing in and on their true value. And then I think that sometimes we tell ourselves stories. Well, the economy is this way, or this, or, this circumstance is such that X or such that Y. And I'm thinking, if we allow ourselves to believe these stories that we tell ourselves, is it any wonder that when we see someone on Facebook report that they just had $1 million launch in 20 minutes, that's not for them. It's only for them, the other people. I mean, people are succeeding beyond their wildest dreams. And a lot of it has to do with not only knowing their superpower and who it's for and being able to do zero friction selling, as you say, but it's having the confidence around being able to carry that off with presence and authority and pizzazz and presence, right?
Yeah. And, so there's a distinction between alignment and fear, right? And so sometimes things just aren't in alignment, and that's okay. Like, launch models aren't for everybody. Some people are more like, hey, I'm in the consulting model. I'm going to sell these big ticket items. Some people are like, I like having my self-liquidating offers that drive traffic to an online course that I never talk to a soul, right? So there's all kinds of strategies. There's all kinds of business models. Alignment means you found the business model that captures your superpower. You know how to message the magic of your superpower, and you pick the right audience that's hungry for this. So that's really the key. Fear is different. Fear is basically, I don't know how to do it, so I reject it. Or I'm uncomfortable and I don't know if I believe in myself, so I don't take the effort. Fear is, I'm only going to do what's comfortable. I'm not going to stretch myself or challenge myself to climb a mountain. You and I both have some fun stories about this. And I think this is such an important part of whether it's getting yourself on a podcast or turning those podcast guesting into your client attraction machine for your big ticket offers, whatever the thing is that you get out of today. You have to be committed, not just interested. And I had a real life experience of this a few years ago. Before the pandemic hit, my family went to Yosemite. And have you ever been to Yosemite?
Yes, magnificent.
Did you go to Vernal Fall? Was that one of the highlights?
I don't think we did. I don't think we did.
So if you've been to Yosemite, I want to hear from you in the notes. Shout out in the comment and let me know if you've been to Vernal Fall. So Vernal Fall is it's like 700 steps straight up the side of a waterfall. And it's an hour and a half trek to get to the bottom of this hill. So my family decides they want to go on this trip, and it's 95 degrees outside. I am not good in the heat, and I am not in the best shape of my life. And I was terrified. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. They're like, come on, just do as much as you can. So we do the hour trek to get to the bottom of this hill, and I'm beat. I'm like, oh my God, it's so hot outside. I don't know if I can do this. I look up at these 700 plus stairs going straight up the side of a mountain. And it's like covered in water because the rain, the waterfall is like misting all over the stairs. So they're super slippery. I'm like not feeling it at all. And then I look at my husband and I say, honey, I don't know if I can do this. He's like, I will do whatever you want, but I'm not leaving you. If you want to go, we'll go. If you don't want to go, we won't go. And I thought about it for a minute and I thought, I don't want to be the one who didn't go. I was like, I've said, what part of me has to find some commitment here to get to the top of the mountain? So I went. Took me longer than everybody else. Way more involved than I ever thought, because once we got to the top, I realized there was another level we had to climb to get off the mountain. So, and it's a little bit of that blind faith that I think many of us as entrepreneurs, like, we don't know what the whole mountain's going to look like. We don't know how we're going to get there. We don't even know how we're going to summon the courage and the confidence and the capability to pull it off. But one step at a time, we have to keep recommitting to the end game, not to the comfort of what it is that we will accomplish right now. And if we don't keep recommitting, then things that are uncomfortable will become roadblocks that take us out of the game, and we never get to the good stuff. I cannot tell you, Nancy, how amazing it was to be at the top of that waterfall, to look down, to go into the wading pools, to celebrate pushing myself through some resistance and doing something that felt hard and I didn't even know if I could succeed at, but I did it anyway.
That is a remarkable story with so many ways to dig in and elaborate, that I think that could be a whole other show too.
Oh my gosh, now we have 3 shows.
but the whole idea of, if you are a new entrepreneur with a brilliant idea that you want to bring alive in the new year, but you have absolutely no concept of how you're going to do it, who are you going to invite to help you navigate a path? Or are you going to live with regret for never having done it? Because I'm just guessing, Melanie, you having made that trek to the top of that mountain, despite whatever your resistance, despite the miserable weather, despite the fact that you were discounting your level of fitness or ability to do it, how did that change you when you got to the top?
Oh, if you go back in my Instagram feed, you'll see my write-up about it, because it helped me recommit to some things that I didn't know how to do in my business. And instead of feeling, so what happens in our subconscious mind is we are constantly building neural pathways, and the pathway we're building is either hope or failure, disillusionment or excitement and celebration. Like, we're constantly doing that. And so if we try something and we give up because it's not working the way we think, we start building a neural pathway called it's okay to give up. And eventually that neural pathway takes over, and we convince ourselves that that's what we do. That's what's acceptable to do when we are not getting something the way we think we're supposed to get it. Life always we are always aligning with that, what we need. And it oftentimes looks very different than the picture in our mind of what we think it's supposed to look like. So, I think one of the things that I've always been super passionate about is shattering people's limits. One of the things my clients get from me that they don't even realize they're getting is I'm helping them shatter a limit and achieve something they didn't even know was possible from them. And that is the most powerful confidence boosting experience on the planet. And so in those moments, my husband was my champion. Like, he was my cheerleader. Like, we're going to do this. We'll do it how we need to. And I think most of us, we try to accomplish these big goals without a cheerleader or someone championing us by our sides, which is typically a coach. And that's why we don't do it. We don't succeed because we give up too soon, or we don't know how to fine tune the approach to get us to the outcome.
Which is a huge support for people not going it alone. And so what I think is kind of interesting is, in the work that the two of us do, perhaps we lead with something practical and tactical, like how not to make mistakes when you're making an approach to a podcast host. Everybody needs to learn that. But then when you dig in and you unpeel the onion, you realize that there's a whole lot more to it than the practical tactical. That's what's going on between your ears. And then there's the whole navigating the path without going it alone piece, which is where you have to really be committed and convicted to making a wise choice for someone who can guide you where you want to go, because none of us succeeds alone. So I would be remiss if I did not ask you. I'm imagining that today people are listening to this and saying, Melanie Benson is the person I've been looking for. And yes, I am going to go to melaniebenson.com/get known to get her 17 mistakes you're making. But I'm also guessing that there's some people here that would like to have a consultation with you to see if they might be a candidate for your inner circle or your mastermind or whatever else of higher value that would take them to that mountaintop. Is there a way for people to connect with you in your calendar, or some way to qualify for a time with you? Is there anything that you could offer?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And I really appreciate so much when, you make that opening. Yeah. So if you are thinking that this is the year you're going to join a mastermind, or you're looking for that right coach, or you maybe want to do a VIP day, I always tell people the best place to go is to melaniebenson.com/coaching. My current offers are there, my invitations. And if you go to the bottom, there's a way to ask for a consultation. We call them amplify audits. And I always say, fill out the application, even if you aren't 100% sure, because sometimes filling out the application gives you a lot of insight into the foundation of what you need to pull off that next level of success.
Brilliant. Well, I would fondly wish that the right people that are inspired by your whole approach today will be running and not walking to do both of the things that we are suggesting. One is to download the 17 mistakes you're making as a guest expert that are costing you the lead and the client. And the second, for those serious folks, not tire kickers. This is not a tire kicker kind of opportunity, people. If you want to work with Melanie in any way, shape, or form, you should be serious, and you should fill out the audit form, and you should be ready for that conversation as if it was the most important conversation of your life, because there's a mountain waiting to be climbed, and you sure as heck don't want to go it alone.
Thank you, Nancy. And I'd say that I take on people who are committed, even if they're not sure how to be committed. If you're just interested in might be nice to make some extra money, but you really see your business as a hobby, I'm probably not your coach, because you are certainly not going to have a hobby when I'm done with you.
Wow. Melanie, the time we had today went so quickly, and we covered so much ground, but I loved every single moment of it. If you are listening live and have loved it as much as I've enjoyed hosting it, please post a comment to YouTube. If you are not yet a subscriber to the Learn More, Earn More channel, please honor me with your subscription, and then you'll be alerted next time I have an amazing guest who has something equally awesome to share to help you to learn more, to earn more. Any parting thoughts before we wrap up today, Melanie?
We're getting ready to tap into a new year. And I think it's an important time to say, what do I want to be known for? Like, how do I want to be seen in this world? Choose to amplify your awesomeness. It is such an important time for us to share our gifts with the people that need it most. And if they can't see you, they can't hire you, and you're not going to get picked to get on that podcast. So let's get you seen and let's get you visible, so you are going to get the booking.
Brilliant. You are awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
It was a true pleasure. And I can already see 2 follow-up shows that we can do at one point or another when your busy schedule can accommodate that. And, for those of you who are watching, when you watch this interview, watch it a second time, because there's so many ninja strategies that Melanie was bringing alive through her positioning, through her proof, through her preparation, that it's masterful what she just did. And when you study what she did, I think you're going to find that you're going to want to be like Melanie, but put your own thumbprint on it, because it's going to take your star much higher and your income much higher as well. Melanie, you're a great guest. It was worth the wait. Thank you so much for making time. Wishing you a very blessed holiday, and may you learn more, earn more, and rise up to accomplish everything that you hope to this year and forever. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Melanie. I don't know if we're still streaming, so
we are.
I will call you personally to say thank you.